Hi, and welcome to A Victorious Life and Outreach Teaching Ministry located here in the beautiful city of Roses, Tyler, Texas. I'm your host, Lori Stimson Ortega, and as always, we want to say thank you for allowing us to come into your homes by way of Southern Link Media. We are in our 11th year. Actually, we're going into our 12th year of media productions, television ministry. January 1st will lead into our 12th year, and we are excited every time it's time to tape. The backgrounds and the different settings have changed over the years, and you know, we've gone from Mr. Cameron and me writing on a flip chart one time. That was really high tech back then, but now it's kind of like, I wish I would pull out a tablet, zoom in on the tablet. I mean, that would be literally, you know, anyway. So progress. So we are thankful that we are able to do this, and we also want to say thank you for those donations. Keep those donations. Can I say that, Mr. King? Keep those donations coming in, because we are revamping the website, and you know, things cost money. Now we're not here to beg and or plead or anything like that, but we want to say thank you for those of you that have sent donations for not just the television ministry, but for the prison ministry, for the park ministry, for the newsletter publication, and all of those different things. We want to say thank you for what you're doing and what you have done. We thank those who sent just a single donation. We thank you for that. We thank you for those who every month they'll say, oh, here's $20, or I'm going to send $30, or what have you. We appreciate that. Now, I do want to say this past Sunday, because we pre-taped for, this past Sunday, we were able to, with the help of, there were two individuals that donated to this cause, and they didn't want their names called. I don't understand that, Miss Cameron, because I'm like, if you're doing a good thing, I think you should be rewarded. But out of respect for those individuals, and I know they're watching, and I know they're laughing at this, we were able to take, it's going to seem like such a small thing, but we were able to take individually wrapped pecan pies to the incarcerated inmates at the Beto unit. We were able to do that, and you know, that seems like such a small thing in some people's eyes, but you know what? Those men and those women, now at Beto, it's an all-male facility, but they are there during the holidays, and I know some people that we gave pecan pies to, they don't celebrate Christmas, and I'll be upfront with you. I know Mr. Cameron, he's going to just shut this. He's gonna edit this out. I think we need to evolve in our celebration of Christmas. Jesus don't need Nike Airs. He doesn't need they don't call them Chuck Taylors. He doesn't need Converse. That's how my age. Adidas. He doesn't need PlayStations, Xboxes. He doesn't need diamond rings, as the Williams brothers would say, fancy things. Jesus needs your attention. Okay, he needs he wants to he came here to give you a gift, you know. So I think we need to change our mentality about how we actually celebrate and honor it should become less of a holiday and more of a holy day, where you spend with your family, where you spend time with your friends, where you spend time, you know, really understanding the essence of Christmas. The essence of Christmas, look at that. Christ must. More in Spanish, mas means more. So Christmas, Christ, think of it that way. More Christ, flip the script. Or think of it, you know, when it says Christmas, there was a special religious celebration. You know, there was a special service to remember not just his birth, but really to understand his purpose for coming here. Because if we're not careful, we'll have Jesus still like this, the figurines or the statues behind me. Jesus is a full-grown man now. He's not a baby. He only stayed a baby. How long you stay a baby? Like 7 or 8, 10 or 12. When you start doing 10 or 12 months, you're a toddler. So he's no longer a baby. So he's not needing all of these gifts. You know, I'm sure there are people. I guess Christmas kind of snuck up on me, Mr. Karen, because I was at Hobby Lobby and I saw people, not Hobby Lobby, excuse me. I was at Dillard's and I saw people with just bags and bags and bags of things, and I was thinking, man, this what day is this? Is this that end of the month sale? But then it occurred to me, wait a minute, these people are buying Christmas gifts, and I thought, okay, I'm not gonna tell you what I thought. It wasn't anything sacrilegious, but I thought, I wonder, do they spend? Well, yeah, I will. I guess I will tell you what I wonder. Do they spend that much time in their walk with Christ? I wonder how much of the Bible stories they really know. I wonder how much of what he said they really make applicable to their lives. Because if we made the stuff that he said more applicable to our lives, then we wouldn't be buying each other gifts. We'd be going to these shelters. You know, we'd be finding Skid Row. We would be handing out jackets to prostitutes and socks to homeless people. We wouldn't be just lavishing these things that have no tangible worth or value, spiritual tangible value in our lives. We wouldn't be doing that. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know how I got off on Christmas, Mr. Cameron, but I just feel like it needs to be said. It's Christmas Eve. So again, we're not telling you not to celebrate and honor the holidays. You know, when my husband asked them, well, what do y'all want for Christmas? And when the youngest one said he needs to think about it, let him get back, I spoke up and said, well, you know what, that means all your needs are taken care of. So you don't need anything. So you'll get one thing. What do you need? Think of that one thing that you need. And you know what? That's what Christmas is. That's what tomorrow, since this is Christmas Eve, that's what tomorrow should be about. Tomorrow should be about, okay, you know what? Kids, it's Christmas. But before we go in here and do all this other stuff, we're going to stop and we're going to look around. Even before Christmas, even this should have been done every day, every week. Look around. We got food, got clothing, we got shelter, we got transportation, communication. We have things everything that you need throughout the year, God has provided. So what we're going to do is we're just going to thank him for what we already have. We're going to thank him that there was no loss of life in our family. Nobody, we were not in the hospital. We didn't get disturbing news. I'm not tapping on the glass to see my son. You know, I'm not tapping on the glass, have hand to hand to see my husband or brothers or sister or any of the nephews. I'm not doing that. You know, so that's what tomorrow should be about. If you couldn't get your children what you wanted to get them, then thank God and praise God that you give them lights, you give them water, you give them food. If you can't, if they were complaining and sad and upset, here it comes, Mr. Cameraman. First person you need to blame is yourself, because some monsters we create ourselves. So if you when Christmas comes, when Santa Claus comes, when Santa Claus come, when Christmas come, you been a good boy, you been a good girl. We're teaching manipulative behavior. We're teaching that there's nothing, get something for nothing. You know, we're teaching that's really in essence what this holiday is turning out to be. You know, how many people here again, Mr. Cameron, how many people before they start Christmas, if they've lost a loved one, like a parent or how many of y'all, before y'all touch one gift, y'all go to the cemetery and say, you know what, we want to thank you, even though they're not there, we want to thank you for helping us to understand the importance of family. How many families join hands and pray and thank God for, hey, I thank you for our parents, our grandparents, and I thank you that they raised us. How many people do that? You know, in African American culture, we call that the ancestors. You're not praying to the ancestors, but you're thanking God that, hey, you know what? If it were not for the struggle of these people, if it were not for the dedication of these individuals, we would not be able to celebrate freely. We would not be able to have those things if my parents, we'll say if my father, if he had not instilled in us, go to college or be productive, we could, you wouldn't have this type of lifestyle. So that's what I'm saying. On tomorrow, don't get so caught up. I got to get this for this, and I got to get that. Because as soon as that child throws that toy or leaves something out the wrong way, you're going to want to revoke. You're going to regret spending the money on it. And you're going to revoke the semi-blessing that you gave, that you put on it when you gave it to them. So again, we're not trying to rain on your parade. But we did feel led and continue to feel led to say this. Christian people of the world, Christians, believers of the world, if we don't stop, put a period to some of this stuff that we are trying to usher in as religious worship to God, if we don't stop that and get back to the basics of what we really believe and what we hold to be true, then we're going to end up just wandering around here just lost. Okay, lost in the name of Jesus. That sounds funny, but you understand what I'm saying. Lost in the name of Jesus. It's like, again, let me tell the word, Jesus is a full-grown man. I'm not telling you not to celebrate Christmas, not to honor, his birth, but I'm saying in the honoring of his birth, remember his death and remember his resurrection. And if we're saying that he is the reason for the season, then we shouldn't be chasing a lot of these. Credit cards shouldn't be maxed out. Nobody should be. I wasn't able to get you what I really wanted you. Well, there were times during the year that you got them what they needed and you got them what they wanted. So do not allow just that physical, tangible side of gift giving to get you sidetracked. Because you know what? I personally think some of the best gifts that we can give our family, friends, and our children, especially our children, the best things we can give them is peace, love, joy, happiness, and then provide the basic necessities. And as we are able to do, provide some of the things that they want. I think for our friends, the best thing we can give to our friends is honesty and loyalty, and understanding, and sometimes a good listening ear. I know the cameraman, he's like sounding board. He's just, but those are things we overlook. And those are the things, Mr. Cameron, right? That Jesus, that he pushed, that he stressed. You can have peace. You can have love. You can have joy. You can have help. There's a better way. He stressed those things. But then we allow one day, I didn't have no money to get what I want, to steal our peace, to steal our joy for one day. Nobody cares day after Christmas. It's just a memory. It's just a memory. So I know, again, that was some things that we probably should have said and maybe should not have said. But hey, it is what it is. So I want to say thank you to those, again, go back to that. Thank you to those who have donated and continue to donate to the ministry. We have a lot of things that we're excited about, projects that we're going to undertake beginning of the new year. So we're going to tell you about those next Sunday on New Year's Eve. But I was saying this about the little pecan. That's how this all started, about the little pecan things. It hurt my heart. This is the second year we've been able to do that. And again, when they received, it was just those little bitty mini pecan pies. When we stood there and we passed them out, and I put a little sticker like that just said, "Hey, you matter." You matter. And it didn't even say Merry Christmas. It just said you matter. And I just put Jesus down there because if it's his birthday, I'm passing out gifts to them. He said, but when did we do these things? Remember, he said, hey, he talked about when you do it to the least of it, or you do it for the least and to the least of them. So when those men, Mr. Cameron's like a little bitty about the size of your hand, when they stuck their hand out, and this is just my personal opinion, I'm a woman. I will always be a woman. I do believe that in marriages there should be that level of equality, but at the end of the day, we got to let a man be a man. He's got to take the lead role in some things. Now, in our marriage, there are some things my husband will say, hey, you know more about that than I do. So can you find that out? Okay, that's a courtesy because it's a partnership. But then there are some things where it's like it's not up for any discussion because that's his role, you know. But it felt kind of humbling, and it felt, I'm not going to say humbling, it hurt my heart because here I am passing out a little cake to like 200 plus men. And that's all, of course, that I had to give, which I wasn't going to take a whole bunch of stuff down there anyway. But the looks on some of their faces they arrived at the realization that this is what has happened to my life. That this person that's not related to me, that has no biological or physiological connection to me, has to come down here and give this little bitty token because of the choices that I made in my life. And you know what? I could see in some of their faces, it was humbling for them to have to accept that from that, even that small gift from a woman. Am I making sense with that? Mm-hmm. Because it would have been different had a man been down there, you know, to pass them out or just to even do some. So I thought about that, and they walked away. Some of them, when they walked away and they were in line, they were wiping their eyes, Mr. Cameron. They were crying because it was the harsh reality of I am in a negative situation because of that was their Christmas. Prison not giving you nothing for Christmas. They may give you a little extra slop. You know, when I say slop, I don't mean people are eating, but they may give you an extra little cookie or what have you. But that's what I'm saying. That's the essence of what Christmas is. But don't get it twisted. I'm not just showing up with oatmeal cakes and moon pies on Christmas. Those are things that your donations allow for us to do throughout the year. You know, so again, it's the least of them. There are some that are in there innocent. And I say God's going to if you're innocent, he's going to get you out. If you're guilty, he's going to help you. You're not going to get out till you see, you know, you see that he helps you to see yourself. So again, it's the least. Families. You know, I had the blessing of going to visit some seniors that just have convicted, you know, just convict my heart. They helped me to be a better person. And when we talked about Christmas and stuff, their mentality about Christmas is totally different. They're like, you know what? I'm alive and my family's healthy. And they were saying they thought back to all those times that they, you know, put a lot of stress, a lot of get, give. And it's like, it's not about that. So that's that. So we thank you for your donations. Now we're going to go to, today we're going to start in Ephesians chapter 6, verse number 10. And we're going to go 10 through 18, because remember on last week we were with John chapter 14 verses 1 through 4, and remember we talked about when Jesus said he was going to prepare a place, and we talked about mansions. He wasn't talking about just the physical side of it. Remember, the challenge was for us to realize that when he said he was going to prepare a place for us, so that where he was, that we could be also. He was talking about he was going to the cross in order to reconcile and restore man back to God by way of that spiritual transaction, by way of his blood and all those things. So, and I'm not going to recap that because I think we did a pretty good job explaining that. And that's another plug. If you want to see, if you've missed any of the video series, please feel free to go to YouTube and check them out. So that's what we wanted to stress in, excuse me, John chapter 14 about Jesus knew what they would face after he physically left them. And we started talking about how this is not physical. So when we turn over to Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10, we get these verses will now make even more sense, because Paul is about to tell us, you know, how to prepare. Now, Jesus, you know, well, let me rephrase that. if Jesus said he went to go prepare a place for us, and if Jesus talked about how, hey, he wanted us to be where he could, wherever he was, then we understand that that place that he went to talk about he was preparing the cross. When Jesus said he went to prepare a place for us, the cross was the mechanism that would be used so that man could be spiritually restored back to God. So that where Jesus was, we could have access to him. Before the cross, we could not have access to God. Okay? Because we were still in our sinful, unacceptable states. But when Jesus said in John chapter 14, hey, you know what? I go to prepare a place for you so that where I am, you can be also. And I know from the KJV Bible, I've misquoted that. But when he said that, he wasn't talking again about physical things. He was talking about the cross. He was going to the cross so that we could be prepared to meet God, to have a relationship. We would be restored back to God by way of the cross through his son, Jesus Christ. So when he talked about that, like we said from last week, in John chapter 14, verses 1 through 4, when he talked about that, he was preparing them mentally and emotionally and spiritually to let them know there's going to come a point where you're not, because I'm not physically here, you're going to feel like you're alone. You're going to feel like you're by yourself. And he's saying, I don't want you to be troubled behind that. I don't want you to worry about that, because what I do is going to make it possible for you to always be with me and for me to always be with you. And when time ceases to be, you'll have the opportunity to go and be with me. So that's what Jesus was saying in in John chapter 14, so that when we understand Jesus was preparing them spiritually, then what Paul says in Ephesians chapter 6 verse 10 Ephesians chapter 6, what he's saying is it's not enough for you to be mentally prepared. You got to be spiritually prepared, and because Jesus prepared you spiritually for your spiritual reconciliation back to God, there comes a point where you've got to understand this life we live is not physical. This life that we live has nothing to do with the things that we can put our hands on. It has nothing to do with that. So if you really want to live, you have to elevate how you live. And the way you elevate how you live is to accept the fact that, wait a minute, there's that part of me that will never have peace, will never have joy, will never have love, will never or accept love. There's that part of me that still will walk in doubt. So that part of me that controls all of this other thing, how I think, who I hang out with, where I go, what I want, what I do, that part of me that I've got to address, that part of me that controls all of that. That's the part of you that we can't see. Okay? Now, I'm sure he doesn't mind, since he's the only person in the home studio. I'm sure Mr. Cameron won't mind me using him as an example. Mr. Cameron is very physically fit. Okay? Now, he swears up and down that he doesn't eat right, but he's very physically fit. All right? He works out, every day for how many hours?
No more than an hour and a half.
Okay, that's better than some of us. Okay, let me testify. Now, the only reason, before Mr. Cameron became physically fit, he had to arrive at a reason, or the reasoning or rationale, that how he was looking or feeling was unacceptable for what he wanted in his life, right? What made you take better control of or what made you think about that? Was it the physical side?
It was the physical
how
side.
You looked, or how you felt?
How I looked. And it was a mixture of both.
Okay, yeah. But first you said look, so we're going to run with look, because that's usually what happens. When he looked in the mirror, maybe he saw his stomach hanging over, done lapped over his belt.
No, it wasn't like that.
Okay, calm down. Okay, I got his television. I got to make it bigger. I got to paint a picture. Before he may have turned to the side in his side profile, he didn't like the way he looked. Maybe he had like a swing on his upper arm, Maybe he saw his chin merging with his neck and he said, okay, you know what? I don't like that. Or maybe he went to put on clothes and like, ooh, I got to go up a size. He physically didn't like how he looked. So was that enough to get him to motivate him? It could. For some people it is. For some people it's not. He could have gone to the doctor and they said, you know what? You're a candidate for high blood pressure. Your blood pressure is high. Or we're going to check you for diabetes. Okay. And then maybe he noticed, or maybe he didn't go to the doctor. Maybe he noticed, you know what, I'm kind of sluggish and I'm out of breath. I walk up 4 steps and I'm out of breath. So he committed to say, I need to do something. But again, the only reason he did that was because of the physical side of how he was living his life. Did that make sense, Ms. It made sense in my mind. How he was living his life. So he committed. It was nothing internal. It didn't have anything to do with him spiritually. It was the physical side of it. So that's my point. What Paul is going to say to us is, you make preparations for all of these other things. Okay, you're making preparations for those, but you've got to. There's some protection that you need to protect that part of you that you can't see. So using the example of the cameraman, we see that he's physically fit. Okay, you see that. You see that he's physically fit. You see that he works out. But that's only the physical side that you see of him. You didn't see the internal mechanisms of, hey, wait a minute, of his thought, his emotions. Maybe he didn't feel good about himself when he was kind of chunky. Okay, I'm not saying he was chunky, but maybe he didn't feel good about himself when he would put on a little weight, or maybe he didn't, he felt insecure around other people that, maybe what does it is when you went to high school people, right, Miss Cameron, you see them and you like, they still physically fit and you sitting up here. Okay, so those are the mentalities. We could not see his mentality. We could not see how he felt emotionally. We couldn't see that. But you know what? How he felt on the inside did what? It manifested itself on the outside. He took ownership for how he felt on the inside and he did something physical. All right? That's what Paul is saying. We can have access to God through Jesus Christ. We can have a glorious spiritually transforming experience with Christ. But you know what? At the end of the day, like Paul goes on to tell us, there comes a point where you've basically got to protect those parts of you that nobody can see. You've got to protect that part of you that nobody can get their hands on. You've got to protect that part of you that nobody can see, that shows up and manifests itself physically on the outside. So we get to Ephesians chapter 6, verse number 10, and look what Paul says. He says, finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. This is powerful because by the time Paul writes the book Ephesians or Ephesians, what ends up happening is he is incarcerated. Paul is on death row. Paul knows that his life is about to be cut short. One of the things that we can say about this particular book is that it was one of the last books that of the New Testament that he wrote, because he was coming to grips with the fact that, hey, this is about over. This may be the last time that I communicate with these people or this group. Now we know in 2 Timothy, I went there chapter 4, verse number 7, where he says, I have fought a good fight, I have finished my course, I have kept the faith. We know that was like his last rallying charge, but it was in these books. These last books these books that he wrote, Ephesians being one of them, it was towards the last part of his life. And he understood that, hey, wait a minute, this is something I may not bounce back from. They may not let me go. My fate is sealed. I'm where I'm going to be. Nero is going to stop my cell phone from ringing, but Nero, he could have said that, in his mind, I'm getting close to Nero's chopping block, or I'm getting close to whoever was going to execute him. He was coming to grips with that. So when he wrote this, finally, he wasn't saying finally as in this is the end, but he was saying, hey, I've written to you in the book of Ephesians. He was saying, I've encouraged you, I've exalted you, I've exhorted you to do, or exalted the Lord, I've exhorted you to do different things for the kingdom. I've tried to help you to be better in every area of your life. He says, so what I say now is going to make a whole lot of sense. And if we look at the book of Ephesians chapter 6 verses 10 through 16 or 18, and then we look at 2 Timothy chapter 4 verse 7, you'll understand the essence of Paul's entire ministry and what he had come to discover spiritually as not just an apostle or leader, but as a spirit-filled individual who had allowed the Lord to manifest himself in every area of his life. So that when we get to Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10, and he says, finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. What Paul was saying was, okay, he was like saying, you know what? I want to speak to that part of you that goes against everything that you've ever been taught and everything that you've ever known. He was saying, he says, my brethren. He wasn't talking about just men. He did not assign any gender to this. He was saying, finally, okay, what I say now, I really want you to remember. He's saying, brethren, as a group, he's saying, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. He was speaking to that part of each of us that he was speaking to that nature, the essence of that rudiment, that nature that's in each of us that operates in independence, that operates aggressively, that says, okay, you know what, I'm not going to worry about it. If you don't do it, then I'll get it done myself. He was speaking to that part of us that would require us to walk in humility. He was speaking to that part of us that would require us to take a back seat to the Lord. He was speaking to that part of us that would have to go against everything that society has taught us. Mr. Cameron and I, we're in 2 years, Mr. Cameron, we'll be 50. Can you believe that? We'll be half a century, right? We'll be I don't feel like I'm that age. I don't feel like I'm towards that. I feel more like I'm like him, 27, 28. When I look at our 22-year-old, in my mind, I'm just like 5 years older than he is, So, okay, well, maybe not. So he has to remind me, Ma, you're not young, you're old. So when we were raised at a time where you didn't just take a handout, we were raised during that time where you couldn't depend, even though you had people around you, you couldn't depend on anybody. You couldn't make plans on other people's money, other people's time, or other people's attention. So it speaks to that part of us, that generation of people, and especially some of those seniors. It speaks to that part of you where you've got to give up control of your own life. And he's saying, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Notice it doesn't say, take the bull by the horns. Figure this out on your own. In all your ways, ask him. And if he doesn't tell you, you do it your way. He's telling you to do the opposite of something that you have been programmed to do from day one. What is that? Fulfill your own will. So when he says be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might, he's saying surrender that part of you that wants to do what you want to do. Surrender that part of you that is independent, that is aggressive, that wants to know or knows all the answers. That part of you that can do it yourself. He's saying, get rid of that. stand not on your own logic, rationale, and reason. Don't stand on that. But he's saying stand in the power, be strong in the Lord. Don't be strong in who you know, what you know, how you came to know it. Don't be strong in the things that you can physically put your hands on, the things that you can taste, touch, see, hear, and smell. Don't be strong in how much money is in the bank. He's saying be strong in the Lord. He's saying operate in the strength of the Lord. And it says, and in the power of his might, operate in the strength and the ability of the Lord. He's saying, take that part of you that wants to be in control and give it to somebody else. In essence, give it to the Lord. He's asking you to be both strong and weak at the same time. So the dichotomy of those two things, strong and weak, from within one person means that, wait a minute, Paul is telling me, I've got to give up that part of me that needs to know how all this is going to turn out. I've got to give up that part of me that needs to know my role in all of this. I've got to give up that part of me that already knows what I should do and how I should go about doing it. He's telling me to give that part of me up, but that's going to make me weak. And you know what? That's the essence of faith. Faith, you don't need all the answers. You don't need to operate in your own ability. Faith means entrusting every part of who you are into something that you know and you feel. You may not physically see it, but you know within yourself, it's going to work. It's going to work. But you know what? As believers in Christ, our faith is never blind. People say, I stepped out on faith, blind faith. You got to have blind faith. No, faith doesn't operate like that. Faith sees the end result. It's just having the courage. Faith sees the future, but it equips you with the courage to stand in the present. So when he says, be strong in the Lord and the power of his might, he's asking you to be strong and weak. He's saying, be strong in your faith. Be strong based on not your abilities, but in the power and the might of God. He said, so be weak, be strong in what you believe, in your convictions, in what you have experienced of God, what you've experienced of the power of God working in your life. Be strong. Remember those testimonies. But then he says, be weak. And what does that mean? And in the power, that's what it says. And in the power of his might. Be weak by surrendering your own strength. Don't operate in your own strength. Don't operate in your own power. Don't try to operate in your own might. He's saying, be weak. Allow for the Lord, totally surrender your life to the Lord and watch and watch what he does for it, because you're going to operate from his power source. Okay? And you're going to operate from him. Now, I use this example all the time. When I was passing out those little cakes and stuff, Mr. Cameron, one of the inmates or one of the brothers, he said, he was telling this other guy, he said, now, I crack jokes with him because you know me, Mr. Cameron, man, I crack a joke in a minute. But they were in line and I kept noticing him pointing and they were laughing. So when they got up there, I said, well, what was so funny? And he said, oh, he was laughing at your glasses. Now, he got quiet when he got up there, but the other one said he was laughing at your glasses. I said, what about my glasses? He said, he told me they look like camera lenses. And I laughed. Okay, I laughed. I said, oh, that's funny. You got jokes. I was like, okay, good one. And I went like this. I said, you won. Oh, I said, what's that number? This 7. I'm gonna make up a number. Number 777779311. You got jokes. So you got 1. Lori Arte, Sister Lori, 0. But he got my point. And because what did I do? I basically said, okay, point for what's your number? To let you know who's really the laughing stock. Okay, that makes sense. Who's in a nice way? I wasn't trying to throw shade, and it didn't bother me what he said about the glasses, but afterwards I felt bad in a way because I said, you didn't have no reason to read the man numbers. You was up there trying to pull a rank, you know. So after the service, he came up and he said, Sister Lori, he was with the same guy. He said, Sister Lori, he said, I wasn't trying to be mean about your glasses. I said, no, it was real funny. I said, because I've never thought of myself as wearing camera lenses. I said, but you know, I am almost 50. And we were laughing about that and stuff. And I said, but what you don't know is the lens in my right lens, I said, it's going to be thick because I scratched my cornea. I said, so eventually I will probably I get a corneal transplant or, do something different. And I said, I can still see. I said, but that's the only reason because I've aged and the vision in this eye has gotten weaker because the left eye is taking, using more vision. And I said, but see, you wouldn't know that. And he said, yes, ma'am. He said, but he said, I do like the frames. He said, and the other guy said, yeah, he said, those some chill frames or whatever. And he said, is that what they're wearing out there? And you know what I did, Mr. Cameron? I looked at him, I said, I don't know what they wearing. This is what I'm wearing out there. Mm-hmm. And he said, oh, so that's not what he said, we don't know because I've been in here. And I said, well, let me tell you something. I said, see, that's the problem. Don't live your life based on what other people are doing. I said, and the other one picked up on it because he laughed when I said, well, I don't know what they wearing. This is what I'm wearing. And he said, well, no, is that the style? I said, I don't know what the style is. This is my style. And I said, see, that's what I'm talking about. Don't get so caught up in being a conformist. Oh, that's the style. That's the look. Miss Cameron, can I say this? You see a lot of people wearing some of these styles clothing wise, and they don't have a body shape or body composition for it. But because it's the style, they're going to walk around here uncomfortable. I love the way stilettos look, but the older I've gotten, my arch is different. I can't walk around here in heels that high. If I want to be comfortable, I'm choosing comfort. And you see people constantly walking around all bent all over and be wobbling and the heels be all curved. And anyway, like y'all with Miss Cameron, y'all with these skinny European cut, skinny jean suits. Some of y'all, no, let that go.
Nope.
Some of, yeah. So that's my point. I use that natural example to say that's what Paul was saying. Don't worry about what other people will say, what other people are doing. You stand strong in the power of his might. You be strong in your faith, but then when it comes to weak, you be weak in what you want to do as an individual. You be weak in your mind or weaken yourself by saying, okay, your brain, your mind will tell you this is what you should do. This is what you ought to do. And when faith is saying that's not how this works. The Lord will give you instructions because you're going to stand strong you're standing strong in him, but in the power of his might, not your own human logic, reason, or rationale. So that's what he was saying by that. And then verse number 11, he says, put on the whole armor of God that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. He's saying, basically protect yourself, protect every part of you so that you won't fall victim to the tricks and the trysts of the enemy, which is trysts. I think that's trysts of the enemy. He's saying, protect every part of you. And what he's really telling you to protect your mind, protect your thoughts. Because when you protect those, they're going to protect your actions. From a spiritual standpoint, when we accept Christ as our Lord and our Savior, we receive the Spirit, we are spiritually protected. Okay, we're spiritually protected. But then there's that part of us that the enemy, even though we are spiritually covered and spiritually, we're spiritually restored back to God, there's that part of us, that human nature, that rudiment of sin that the enemy tries to constantly he tries to constantly get you to go back to who you were before you accepted Christ. And the fastest way for him to do that is to penetrate your mentality, how you think and how you feel about yourself. Not what you think or how you feel about other people, but how you think and feel about yourself. So Paul was saying, first of all, if you're going to live this life, if Jesus has gone to prepare a place for you spiritually, if you're spiritually prepared, then he wanted to give you an indication of some natural things that the enemy, some mental and emotional things that the enemy would try to fight you with, that would manifest themselves from a physical standpoint. So the first thing that he says is protect yourself. Put on the whole armor of God so that you can be able to not just stand, because that's a loaded word. Stand. He's like, not so that you can just stand, but that you'll be positioned to see how the enemy is attacking you. Sometimes the enemy will convince people that God doesn't care about them because their finances. And going back to the holidays, if you don't went out here and bought a bunch of stuff, you done ran up credit cards, you've maxed out charge cards, your account is low, so you could, I'm gonna have I don't care what it takes, I'm gonna have a good Christmas this year. What is a good Christmas? I never understood that, even as a kid. Oh, we had a good Christmas this year, because you got everybody stuff that they can touch and hold on their list. That was a good Christmas. Okay. All right. By some people's standards, when somebody says, so that person, using that as an example, Ms. Cameron, that person says, everybody had a good Christmas this December. Those statements start rolling around in February. Or January. We'll say sometimes they'll even prolong it. And they get to the end of January. When those statements come due, and you every day you getting a different statement with a different amount of money, for a different amount of money, and if you don't have the monies to pay all of your regular bills, and then you start making the minimum payments, and you get behind, and stuff start getting turned off, shut down, you do not have the right, okay, to charge God when the enemy tells you God he ain't concerned about you. You don't even have no money. You see what I'm saying? You made poor choices. God blessed you with what he needed, what you needed. He blessed you with a job. But he wanted you to see that it's more than just stuff you can see, you can put your hands on. So when the enemy comes to your mind in January, after you've maxed out credit cards, after you've maxed out your savings account, buying gifts that are probably broke, and relationships have ended, you mad at somebody, and the enemy he's gonna capitalize on that. He's gonna say, when you see, oh Lord, they about to turn my lights off. Ooh, my money is low. I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, you know what? The enemy will capitalize. That's when the enemy slithers in. And he says, if God loves you, he wouldn't have let you he would not have let you get in this situation, because he knew that all you wanted to do was just have a good Christmas for your family. He knew that you just wanted to make people happy. And you bought that girl that Michael Kors purse, or that Dooney bag for $400, she ain't even talking to you now. That's how the enemy works. And what is Paul saying? He says, put on the whole armor of God so that you may be able to stand against the tricks or the wiles of the devil, so that before Christmas rolls around, you ask the Lord. If you get caught up in spending like crazy, you say, Lord, look, help me with this. Help me to not feel bad. Address that part of me, that internal part of me that nobody can see, that I'm trying to buy love. Because that's really what people are trying to do. You're trying to buy love. You're trying to buy friendship. You're trying to buy respect and all appreciation. That's what they're trying to do. They want to feel good about themselves. So you pray, Lord, look, help me not to be that person. Help me to be satisfied with what I can do. Help me to be a good steward over the things that you've blessed me with, so that when Christmas rolls around or the holiday rolls around, you do what you can do within your means. So that when January rolls around, day after Christmas, you're still going to live. because the enemy will capitalize on that. He'll try at every opportunity. He tries to build a case against God in your mind. So that's why Paul was saying, put on the whole armor, protect every part of your life. Verse number 12. Now, this is what is interesting. How am I looking on with time, Mr. Cameron?
You got 10 minutes.
Okay. When this is the part that's interesting, because in between, what I noticed in reading this is in verses 11, we just read, in between verse 11 and verse 13, he breaks with protocol and he begins to speak about something of a spiritual nature. So he starts out by telling you how to prepare yourself, but then in the middle of that, he gives you a clue and a spiritual indication that only God could have revealed to this man to help you fight, because it picks back up in verse 13 about the armor of God. So look at what it says in verse 12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Paul is saying, for we wrestle. You know, wrestling is not like boxing. Boxing is trying to knock people out. It's about power and just about power, basically. Power, speed, and what else? Just power and speed. That's the goal is to knock and endurance. Power, speed, and endurance. Power to knock you smack dab out. Speed for you to dodge the punches and or get them in. And endurance. If nobody gets knocked out, how long can this person endure? And I will admit to you, I used to like boxing until I figured out it was rigged. Now, the days of, okay, but you're saying boxing isn't rigged?
No.
Okay.
But continue.
Okay. From a financial standpoint. Financially.
But not the art of boxing.
Okay. I still appreciate the art of boxing, but I don't like, in boxing now, it's more entertainment. And because it's continuing to evolve, nobody's really boxing. I don't like to see men bloodied and all that kind of stuff. I don't like that, but I do understand the sport and the hits and the point system and all that. But back during the days of Muhammad Ali and Sugar Ray Leonard, you know, I sometimes I go to YouTube and I watch that 1 minute 1 minute, 1 second fight between Sonny Liston and, well, that knockout between Muhammad Ali and Sonny Liston, because that's like it, and I have that frame picture in my son's bathroom, not because of, you know, the knocking out, but there's always going to be, I wanted to remind him, there's always going to be somebody bigger, badder, and stronger than you. So don't walk around here, you know, talking trash to people, because you could find yourself, you know, in a bad situation. But it's not like boxing. Wrestling is not like boxing. Again, boxing is power, strength, and endurance. It's to knock you out. Wrestling is strength. It's a strength and position. That's all it is. You know, just strength and position. You overpower somebody, you restrain them long enough for a count system, and then that's it. You don't get points for the fake hits to the chest, fake slaps to the face, fake, you know, overhead body slam. You don't get points for that. You get points if you can subdue that person for how long you can overpower and subdue that person. So when Paul says, for we wrestle not, he was like, this isn't about your power, your strength, or your endurance. It's not, he's like, the enemy is not coming at you like that. The enemy's not fighting you in that way. He's saying, it's like you're wrestling. This is about, you don't want him to overcome you. You don't want him to get the better of you. You are trying to maintain your position. That's what wrestling is. He's saying, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood. He's saying the physical things you can put your hands on, things that you can see. It's not your enemy. It's not your enemy. You know, you're not fighting against that person. You know, if we look at, remember he says, put on the whole armor of God so that you may be able to stand against the wiles or the tricks of the devil. He's saying that, you know, you out here every time you riding around here in these top dollar cars, you know, you always have to have a luxury brand car. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm saying this to prove a point. Mr. Cameron, I've met women who have dated men based on what they had. Okay, or yeah, I can really fall for him. He real nice. They ain't went out. They just saw a BMW. They saw some clothes, and he had good conversation. The day they go out, and they meet up somewhere. He driving that BMW. She drives her car. He drives his car. They don't park by each other, but they see each other pass. Next thing you know, oh, okay, yeah, I'll come pick you up. You hop in that car. Ain't no air. It's got about 200,000 plus miles on it. You see what I'm saying? Or if there's air, well, let me get out and open the door for you. Well, he opening the door for you because you got to open it a certain way because the lock is jammed. But because that's what you're looking, that's what you want physically, and that's the image that he's trying to project physically. That's what Paul is saying. And both people saying they're Christians. That's why he's saying that's a trick of the enemy. Cars don't make people. People make the cars. You know, I know some wealthy people. I mean, they could die many lifetimes and come back, and they don't drive brand name cars. You know, they have driven them, but it's like, hey, it is who it is. I've heard stories of people, men who had money, who had nice living, and who were successful businessmen. They didn't tell the people that they owned the company until after, the woman got engaged, or they asked them to marry him, and then they shared that because they wanted to know, hey, you like me for me. And that's what he was saying. You're not wrestling against flesh and blood. Stop trying to impress all these people with this stuff that they don't really care about, that you don't really, you don't really have the means for. Don't stop trying to impress people. And he said, because that is a trick of the devil. That's a trick of the enemy to get people to get caught up into looking at this, the facade that you are projecting. That's a trick. That's what Paul was saying. That's why you need to be protected. Your mind needs to be protected because you're trying to retain your position in Christ. You're wrestling to maintain your position in him. He's saying because you're not fighting against flesh and blood. You're not fighting. The fight is not against each other. The fight is not to impress each other. The fight is not to see who dies with the most toys. That's a worldly mentality. He's saying, but you're fighting against principalities. Principalities from the scripture standpoint means you're fighting against an organized system that you can't see, that was set up to take you out, that was set up to knock you out of your position, that was set up to try to wear you down. Those principalities, a spiritually organized system that does not have your best interest at heart. He's like, when he said principalities, he's saying it's organized, it's structured. It's going to do whatever it takes. Like Malcolm X said, by any means necessary. If it takes getting you sidetracked, chasing a dollar, you're always going to be chasing this dollar. If it gets you sidetracked with acceptance, you're always going to be seeking acceptance. And you notice what it is. It's things that are attacking your mind. So that's why he said, put on the whole armor of God so that you may be able to stand against the tricks and the snares and the tears and the diversions and the distractions of the enemy. And what I want you to notice, what we're going to pick up on next week, is he didn't tell you to fight. He didn't tell you to fight at all. He just told you to stand. And when he said stand, he wanted you to position yourself. Be prepared. Position yourself and be prepared for the onslaught that's coming. But you know what? That shouldn't be a problem, because remember what he said in verse number 10. Be strong in the Lord in the power of his might. So even though you're positioned there, you're going to be strong because you're going to operate from a source of power that's not your own. Well, you know what? We're all out of time. We'll pick up where we left off on next Sunday. But we do want to say Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to you. We pray that that the Lord will continue to strengthen and encourage you, and that whatever your need is, whatever your problem is, believe that God can and will meet your need. He's only a breath away from asking. So as we always say, if you have Christ, you're already a winner. If you have the Spirit of the living God, you can live, you can face any challenge life throws your way. You can live a victorious life. God bless you.